Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. Today, we're really jumping into something core to physics, transients. We're drawing from the classic Feynman lectures on physics to look at how energy acts up in oscillating systems, especially when things, well, aren't stable.
Yeah, the stable stuff, the steady state, that's one thing. But the really interesting physics often happens when things are changing, starting up or dying down.
Right. So the challenge isn't just analyzing something running smoothly. It's about what happens right at the start, or maybe more importantly, what happens when you suddenly, switch off the driving force.
Exactly. That's the transient behavior. And understanding that requires some specific mathematical tools.
Tools that Feynman introduces, especially complex numbers, right, to get beyond just simple sine waves.
Precisely. Our mission today is to unpack how Feynman uses complex numbers, not just to describe oscillations, but to calculate energy and understand how these systems decay. This is crucial stuff for mechanics, for circuits, really fundamental.
Okay, so let's dive in. First big topic, calculating the energy of an oscillator. It sounds simple, but Feynman shows it can get surprisingly tricky, especially with those complex numbers floating around.
It really can. Representing a physical quantity, let's say position $6, as the real part of a complex number like OEI omega t, is super powerful for solving the equations of motion.
But energy involves squaring things, like velocity squared for kinetic energy. How does that work cleanly when you've got this complex representation? Just square the real part?
Well, you could try that. Take the real part, which is usually cosine, square it, and then try to find the average over time. But mathematically, that gets messy fast. You end up with terms like cosine squared, which involve frequencies of 2L omega, and averaging those requires careful integration. It's doable, but tedious.
Ah, okay. So there's a better way, I assume.
There is, and it's a really elegant trick Feynman highlights. Instead of squaring the real part, you calculate the magnitude squared of the complex quantity itself. For our complex amplitude all dollars, you calculate $8 times its complex conjugate all dollars.
Right. That key.
Right.
And why does that help with the average energy?
Because the time average of the square of the actual physical quantity, say, velocity squared, turns out to be exactly 1/2 of this average value for the corresponding complex velocity. So text average V2, frac 12 Vway.
Wow, okay, so it completely bypasses dealing with oscillating terms and averaging cosines.
Exactly. It gives you the average squared directly. It simplifies calculating average kinetic energy, $12 meter times text average, V2, and average potential energy, $12 K times text average, enormously. A classic physics shortcut.
That's neat, okay. So we've got average energy sorted. Let's talk about power. We have this forced oscillator, right? External force, $5 pushing it. The power dollars being put in is just force times velocity, Vs dx dt dollar.
Correct. And if you work through the math using the equation of motion, you find something interesting about this instantaneous power dollars. It naturally breaks down into 3 pieces. You can see terms corresponding to the rate of change of kinetic energy, ddtt, 12 meter v, dt, 12 dt, dt, the rate of change of potential energy, 12 k by 2, and then a third term.
The energy loss.
Exactly. The power being dissipated by the resistive force, which is 3 dx dt to a heart, or v to a park. That's energy turning into heat.
So the power input does 3 things. Increases kinetic energy, increases potential energy, or gets lost as heat.
Precisely. Now think about a system that's been running for a long time, what we call the steady state.
Okay, so it's settled down. The average energy isn't changing anymore.
Right. If the average stored energy, kinetic plus potential, is constant, then its average rate of change is 0. So averaged over a cycle, the power going into changing stored energy is 0.
Which means?
Which means, on average, the power being put in by the external force must exactly equal the average power being lost to resistance. The input just balances the losses in the steady state.
That makes sense. Input equals output to maintain the status quo. So how do we quantify how good this oscillator is at holding energy? We mentioned stored energy.
We define E dollars as the total average energy stored the sum of the average kinetic and average potential energies, which we can now calculate easily using that Addo trick.
And this leads to the quality factor, Q.
Yes. Q is defined physically, which is important. It's 2 times the ratio of the average energy stored, divided by the work done per cycle by the driving force to replace the energy lost to damping.
So QIE, 2 pi r shaft work done per cycle. That definition feels intuitive. It's like, how many cycles worth of energy loss are you storing?
Sort of, yeah. Or, more directly, Q over 2 hours is the ratio of stored energy to energy lost per radian of oscillation. A high Q means you store a lot of energy compared to what you lose each cycle. It's a measure of the oscillator's efficiency, its quality.
Like a really good bell that rings for a long time is a high Q.
Exactly, or a good resonant circuit. A Q of, say, 1,000 means it only loses about 11,000th of its stored energy each radian it oscillates. That's a very low loss system.
Okay, we've covered the forced case, the steady state, energy, power, Q, but now the main event, transients. What happens when we, pull the plug, turn off that external cord?
Right, this is where we shift focus to damped oscillations. The system now only has its stored energy, and the damping force is going to make it lose that energy over time.
And does Q still tell us something here?
It absolutely does. Q governs the rate of energy decay. The rate of change of energy is directly related to the energy Ag in Q. EQ is the omega EQ. The negative sign means energy is decreasing.
So DE equal to EQ pay. Let's unpack that. High Q means?
High Q means a small for a given dollar. The energy decays slowly. Low Q means rapid energy decay. That 1 QA factor determines how quickly the oscillation dies out.
Physically, it means the system loses over Q of its energy per radian. So if Q is 1,000, it takes quite a few oscillations for the energy to drop significantly.
Precisely. It describes the persistence of the oscillation.
Feynman shows a figure, 24:1, illustrating this. You see the sine wave oscillation, but its amplitude is shrinking, squeezed inside this decaying envelope.
Yes, that envelope is key. It's an exponential decay. Mathematically, if the driving force is 0, the solution for the displacement sphere must include this decay. The solution looks like 6t is the real part of something like e gamma 2 ei omega d.
Okay, let's break that down. The omega d is the oscillation part, but what's the oscillation part? But what's the omega d factor?
Good questions. Omega d is the damped angular frequency. Because of the friction or resistance, the system actually oscillates slightly slower than its natural frequency omega d, the frequency it would have with no damping.
Makes sense. Friction slows things down a bit, and the e gamma t, the term.
That's the exponential decay envelope we saw in the figure. It dictates how the amplitude shrinks over time. The constant gamma is the damping coefficient. For a mechanical system, it's the resistance $3 divided by the mass number. So gamma is Rm day.
So high resistance starter means a larger gamma, which means the gamma t term decays faster. The amplitude drops off more quickly.
Exactly. That term mathematically describes the dying out of the oscillation.
Now, you mentioned this is the real part of a complex solution.
Yeah.
When you solve the differential equation with no driving force, you get complex solutions, right? Alpha 1 and alpha 2.
Yes, when you assume the solution is exponential, like alpha t, and plug it into the differential equation plus Sexar Dale, you get a quadratic equation for alpha. This generally yields two complex solutions. Let's call them alpha dollar and alpha 2 2.
Why 2 and why complex?
Well, the quadratic formula involves a square root, which can be imaginary if the damping isn't too large. And crucially, these two solutions, alpha dollar and alpha 2 2, turn out to be complex conjugates of each other.
Okay, complex conjugates. Why is it so important that we seem to need both of them to describe the physical motion sex dt?
Because the physical displacement sex t must be a real number. You can't have an imaginary position. The original differential equation has only real coefficients: mass, resistance, spring constant. A fundamental property of such equations is that if a complex function is a solution, its complex conjugate must also be a solution.
See, so if all the alpha works, then alpha 2 2 must also work?
Exactly. And the only way to combine these two valid complex solutions to get a purely real result for the physical displacement dollars is to add them together, or take the real part of one, which amounts to the same thing. The imaginary parts perfectly cancel out, leaving just the real physical oscillation with its decaying amplitude.
Okay, that makes sense. The math has to respect the physics displacement is real. So we built this picture for mechanical systems. Mass, spring, friction. How does this translate to electricity? Do we need a whole new theory?
Not at all. And this is one of the truly beautiful things in physics. The analogy between mechanical and electrical oscillators is incredibly precise.
You mean like an RLC circuit, resistor, inductor, capacitor?
Exactly that. The behavior of charge dollar, or current dollars in dq dttas in an RLC circuit, follows mathematically the exact same type of differential equation as the position $6 of a mass on a spring with damping.
So there's a direct mapping.
A perfect one-to-one mapping. Mechanical mass inertia corresponds to electrical inductance or inertia against current change. Mechanical frictional resistance corresponds directly to electrical resistance. And the mechanical spring constant, stiffness, corresponds to the inverse of capacitance. Capacitance stores energy related to charge, like a spring stores energy related to displacement.
Wow. So inductance dollars is like mass dollar, resistance dollars is like friction dollar, And $1 is like the spring constant dollar.
Precisely. The math is identical. So all the results we found for the mechanical oscillator apply directly to the RLC circuit just by swapping the letters.
Which means the decay rate, gamma, in the electrical case must be.
Proportional to $2, just like gamma was in the mechanical case. More electrical resistance makes the current decay faster.
Okay, so if you imagine closing a switch in an RLC circuit, you'd see the current oscillate, maybe charge sloshing back and forth between the capacitor and inductor.
But that oscillation would die out because of the energy lost in the resistor dollars, just like friction damped the spring. The figures showing electrical transients would look just like the damped mechanical ones.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the nature of the decay depends on the damping. Does that hold for electricity too, depending on the resistance there?
Absolutely. The solutions we found depend on whether that square root term in the solution for alpha is imaginary or real. That depends on how gamma tau 2 compares to the natural frequency of omega dollars.
Which translates to how omega dollar compares to omega dollars 1 squared.
Exactly. So case 1. If the resistance is relatively small, specifically if 2 omega dollars, then the square root is imaginary. We get complex alpha values.
And that means?
That means the system oscillates, the current swings back and forth while its amplitude decays exponentially. This is the common underdamped case, the ringing circuit.
Okay, like the picture with the shrinking sine wave. But what if you really crank up the resistance? Makes large.
If $3 is large enough, such that for omega dollars, then the term under the square root becomes positive. The solutions for alpha are now purely real and negative.
Real solutions for alpha. So no omega tart, no oscillation.
Correct. The system doesn't oscillate at all. The current, or charge, just decays exponentially back towards zero from its initial value. This is called the overdamped case.
So instead of ringing, it just settles, like putting a heavyweight in molasses instead of on a spring.
That's a good analogy. It returns to equilibrium as quickly as possible without overshooting or oscillating. Mathematically, you get two different real decay rates corresponding to the two real negative values of alpha.
Fascinating. So the resistance is the critical factor determining whether it rings or just fades out.
It is, and there's a special case right in between called critical damping, where it returns to zero the fastest without any oscillation, but we often focus on the underdamped and overdamped regimes.
So Feynman wraps us all up with a general solution, right? Equation 24.22. Does that cover all these cases?
Yes, that final equation is the general solution for the transient response of the damped oscillator, mechanical or electrical. It includes the exponential decay factor EVO2 in it and combines cosine and sine terms, or equivalently, a cosine with a phase shift.
And you use the initial conditions, like the starting position $dollars and starting velocity $v dollar to figure out the specific constants in that equation.
Exactly. Those initial conditions determine the amplitude and phase of the transient response, fully describing how the system behaves from the moment the driving force is removed or changed. It ties everything together.
Okay, that was definitely a deep dive into transients. Let's try to summarize the key takeaways for everyone listening. First, complex numbers aren't just a mathematical convenience for oscillators. They're almost essential for easily calculating average energy using that 1-Aron complex conjugate trick. It avoids a lot of painful calculus.
Second takeaway has to be the physical meaning and utility of the quality factor, Q. It's not just a number. It physically represents the ratio of energy stored to energy lost per cycle, or radian. And it directly tells you how quickly a free oscillation will decay. The lay is omega EQ.
And third, the really elegant, almost startling universality here. The exact same mathematical framework describes both a mechanical mass spring system and an electrical RLC circuit. The physics looks different, but the underlying math of transients is identical.
And that identical structure across completely different physical domains? What makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is the math just a fantastically useful language we invented to describe reality? Or is there something deeper? Does that shared mathematical structure somehow reflect a fundamental organizing principle of reality itself? It's a question that sits at the heart of physics.
A profound thought to end on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Feynman's take on transients. We hope you found it insightful. We'll see you next time.